Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to another tier list video. This week I wanted to do something a little bit special and rank the Pokemon games, the main series Pokemon games, nothing like Mystery Dungeon or anything like that, but the main generational Pokemon games. So, this might be a little controversial, as all tier lists are controversial, but this is one that will show what kind of Pokemon fan I am. I want to start with the Generation 1 games, which of course is Red, Blue, and Yellow, and I'll explain why I put them in what specific tier. So, Red version and Blue version were two of the first Pokemon games I ever played, but I was a little kid, so, I got into Pokemon that way, but then again, I wasn't a hardcore Pokemon fan game at the time. I hadn't really experienced most of the Pokemon games. And now that I've played every Pokemon game, including the remakes of every game, I can say that Red and Blue are not as great as they used to be for me. And Yellow I've only played a couple times, and it's the same thing as Red and Blue, you just start with a Pikachu. So they're basically in the same category. In my opinion, Yellow deserves to be higher than Red and Blue because of, the whole Pikachu factor and how you can get all three starters, but I'm sadly gonna have to put them in the F tier. And right now, that might seem a little bit extreme, but when I get to the Gen 2 game, the Gen 3 games, when the remakes are in there, I'm gonna explain why they're in the F tier. And just to give you a warning, those are the only games that are going to be in the F tier, but I gotta explain why later on. Alright, moving on to Generation 2, of course we only have Gold, Silver, and Crystal. Generation 2 is, say, my third favorite generation of all time. I've played it so many times over and over again. I played Gold very closely after I started playing Red, and I love the games to death. I don't think I could ever be bored with them. However, I do like the remakes more, so the remakes will be higher on the tier list. But for Gold, Silver, and Crystal, since I do enjoy those games and they're actually playable, I'm going to put them in the C tiers. Alright, so that's it for Generation 2. Moving on to Generation 3. We have the main Generation 3 games, which of course are Ruby, Sapphire, and the sequel Emerald, and the remakes for Generation 1, which are Fire Red and Leaf Green. So, starting off with the actual Generation 3 games, I've said it so many times on this channel, starting with my first series on the channel, which was the Omega Ruby Nuzlocke, and I've mentioned it throughout other playthroughs. Generation 3 is my favorite generation of all time. One reason being that it's the first generation that came out after I was born. That's just partially the reason. I know it's a silly reason, but that's just part of the reason. Another coincidence with it coming out around the time I was born, the male character option name, the first male character option name in the game is my name, Landon. And even though, if you play as May, the character's name is Brendan. So that's the trainer's name, but Brendan's not an option. The actual option is Landon, which is my name, of course. So I always thought that was pretty cool, and Generation 3 are the most replayable games in my opinion. So I'm going to have to put them in the S tier, because they are my favorite games of all time. And I'm pretty biased about them, but then again, that's just because I love them so much. So yeah, in the S tier for those ones. Alright, moving on to the Generation 3 remake games, not meaning Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, of course I mean the Gen 1 remakes in Generation 3, which is Fire Red and Leaf Green. Now I can explain to you guys why I put the original Pokemon games in the F tier. Generation 1, Kanto, unless we're talking about how much attention it gets, Kanto games are not bad. They're really fun to play with. Kanto is one of the best regions to travel through, not over and over again, but Fire Red and Leaf Green are the most fun ways to play Kanto. So, because of that, I think that they belong in the S tier, and the reason why the original games are in the F tier is because I think they're the most least playable Pokemon games, period. It becomes really boring, the game's super slow, I know that there's the backlight option, and you can have it turn green, but there's just no color whatsoever. It hurts your eyes if you want to play it for so long. It's just not the best way to play Generation 1, in my opinion. I don't think it'll be rare if I play a Generation 1 game on the channel. It would probably be the randomized version where there's custom-made sprites for later generational Pokemon, but if I ever play a Generation 1 game, it's always the Generation 3 remake versions, so that's why they belong in the S tier. Alright, moving on to the next games. The next games in line for the Pokemon games, which of course are Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum. Now, those are just the basic Generation 4 games. There is also the remakes for Generation 2 games, which are Heart Gold and Soul Silver. Now, I haven't played Heart Gold and Soul Silver as many times as you all may have. I've only played them a couple of times. I don't actually own a physical copy of the games. I've only played it on emulators, but I do enjoy them. But I've also not played the actual Generation 4 games very much, which I've mentioned so many times in the Platinum playthrough. I'm literally playing Platinum through the first time as a randomizer blind, so I can't strongly say that I love Generation 4, but they are good games. Just because I haven't played them much does not mean that they belong in a lower tier. I do enjoy playing them. I've played Generation 4 as many times as I've played Generation 8, and I like Generation 8, so I'm not just gonna put them in the D tier there just because I've only played them a couple times. So I'm going to put them in the B tier, partially because they're fan favorites. I'd love to see Generation 4 remakes, and I do enjoy the games as a whole, just haven't played them as many times as I'd like to. Also, Generation 4 Pokemon are some of the greatest Pokemon that, Generation 3 has great Pokemon, but my favorite Pokemon are from Generation 4. That's what I'm saying. So, I'm going to put Diamond and Pearl in the B tier, along with Platinum. Now, Heart Gold and Soul Silver are remakes of some of my third favorite generation of all time, and since I love Heart Gold and Soul Silver so much, and I love Gold and Silver even more, since they're less playable than Heart Gold and Soul Silver in the C tier, and then there's also the following Pokemon factor, so I'm going to have to put Heart Gold and Soul Silver in the A tier. Alright, moving on to Generation 5, the generation that Generation 3 remakes, the generation that Generation 3 remakes should have happened. The only games in Generation 5 are Black and White and Black 2 and White 2. I mentioned in the Black 2 type block that Generation 5 is my second favorite generation of all time. I love the crap out of Generation 5. I love it more than most people do. People love to crap on Generation 5, but in my opinion, Generation 5 is one of the best gens of all time. And Black and White, I'm going to put in the B tier, just because of the way the storyline is. Black and White are super good games, but the one deserving of the A tier is Black 2 and White 2. I've enjoyed playing Black 2 and White 2 more than playing Black and White, and because of that reason, I put Black 2 and White 2 at the high A tier, and I'm going to put Black and White at the high B tier. So, these ones will be at the high B, these ones will be at the high A. Alright. Now moving on to the next generation, Generation 6. There are the base Generation 6 games, which are X and Y, and the remix of Generation 3, which is Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. Now, Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire are remakes of my favorite generation of all time, but it's the first time where a remake of a generation I think is not better than the original. So I'm going to be putting Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire in the B tier, but a higher B tier, because they are Generation 3 games. They're not as fun as the original Generation 3 games, but I definitely do believe they deserve a higher spot, so they're going in the B tier. Now, moving on to X and Y. I should have started with X and Y, but I just wanted to get to Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. X and Y, not gonna lie, they're not the greatest games. They're the first 3DS Pokemon games, but that does not mean that they're crappy games. They're actually really good. They're not the greatest, but they're really good. That's basically the gist of it. There's going to be a lot of B tier games in this, but I do believe X and Y deserve a spot on the B tier, just lower B tier, just because of, you know, the gameplay factor. But there is a Pokemon X randomizer Nuzlocke that's going to be coming up on my channel, so if you like seeing 3DS games randomized, make sure you stay tuned for that. Alright, moving on to the last generation of 3DS Pokemon games, we have Generation 7, which of course is consisting of Sun and Moon and Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. So, Sun and Moon, really good games. The first actual games I played on my own system, not an emulator. Really fun games to play. They're replayable for sure. They're really replayable. But I'm going to be putting Sun and Moon into the B tier as well. But I'm going to be putting them higher than X and Y. I'll be putting them above X and Y. I'll explain why. Alright, so they're definitely not better than Generation 4. Even though I've only played Generation 4 a couple of times. Generation 7 definitely had a couple of flaws that could have been better. But it was a massive improvement of Generation 6 games with X and Y, so I definitely do believe they belong higher than that. But that does not mean that they're necessarily so much better than X and Y. Better story. I miss gyms playing it, so I'm also going to be putting Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon into the B tier. Now the reason I still love Generation 7 even though there's a couple flaws is because the first Pokemon games I shiny hunted it. X and Y definitely could have, but the dex was like so big for me and I got them after Sun and Moon that I just gave up and I was like, you know what, I'll just shiny hunt in the later games. But I did most of my hunting in Ultra Moon. So that's why I put those ones higher than Sun and Moon. And, you know, the enhanced versions, in my opinion, are always better than the original versions because they add a couple of extra factors to it. So, yeah, those ones definitely belong in the B tier. Alright, so most of the games are in the B tier. It's so many games in there that it got thicker. So, moving on to the last two components of this video. Generation 8, kind of like the segue between Generation 7 and Generation 8, was the first Pokemon Switch games, which are Let's Go Eevee and Let's Go Pikachu. Let's Go games are alright. I'm just going to come out and say it. They're alright. They're shiny huntable. It's a good tie to Pokemon Go, but we didn't need another Generation 1 remake. Fire Red and Leaf Green were great remakes on their own, and honestly, we didn't need a Yellow remake. Why remake a game that was remaking a remake of a sequel to a game? It's kind of ridiculous, the whole concept there. So even though they do have a good shiny hunting factor, that's just going to be the only thing that saves the games from being in the F tier. So I'm putting these games in the D tier. Now on to Pokemon Sword and Shield, the most controversial Pokemon games of all time. Now, if you say that these games are good, you get attacked from a side. So no matter what opinion you have on this game, you get attacked for your opinion. I have definitely made my opinion about, I've stood my opinion on Twitter on my main account, which I try to hide from my YouTube promotions account because there's a lot of stuff that goes on there that I don't want you guys to see unless you feel like following my main account. But, Sword and Shield, I think they're great games. I'm just going to come out and say I think they're great games. People just crap on them because there's not every Pokemon's in the game, and then because there's not every Pokemon in the game, they nitpick at everything about it. So I think that they're great games. It's kind of my bias of loving Pokemon no matter what, but they are definitely good enough games. Now, I'm not going to insult myself or any of you by putting them higher than the B tier, but I'm definitely not going to put them in the C tier because I did enjoy them. So I will be putting Sword and Shield above Generation 7, but below Generation 4. So that is my whole tier list right there, guys. Let me see if I got a good view here. Yeah, that looks like a pretty good view of it. Alright, yeah, that's going to be it for my Pokemon games tier list. If you guys did enjoy, make sure you leave a like on this video. This video idea was actually recommended to me by my friend Dumb Dratini in the comments of the last video I did with the tier list video. So if you guys want to make suggestions of what tier lists I should make in the future, in a future video like this, let me know down in the comments, and also let me know if you agree with any of my placements of these games. Alright, that's going to do it for this video. Make sure you subscribe if you're new to the channel, ring that notification bell so you get notified about future episodes or videos of my channel. This is Inferno Man burning out, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Goodbye.